UFC Fight Night Vegas 36, Brunson versus Till is now in the rearview mirror. It's time to start looking forwards. This is every single fight to make after UFC Vegas 36. I've got all of the key fighters from the card on the screen right now, and you may notice there is an empty box next to all of them. We're going to be matchmaking the entire card, finding their next fight, and I've got their next fight hidden around the perimeter of the screen, and I'll slowly reveal them as the video goes on and place them where they belong on the screen as we go along, starting with the main event. Derrick Brunson beat Darren Till in a good performance, in all honesty. He 10-8'd him in the first round, in my opinion. Won the second round very dominantly as well, and then finished him in the third. Very, very good performance by Derrick Brunson. Not so good of a performance by Darren Till. Let's move on. Derrick Brunson needs a new opponent. I know he said he wants to sit out on the sidelines. You're just not going to get a title shot by sitting out on the sidelines in the middleweight division. Let's just say this. Paulo Costa versus Marvin Vettori happens. Jarrod Canonier takes on the winner of Paulo Costa versus Marvin Vettori. The winner of that eventual bout's going to get the title shot. I think Derrick Brunson needs one more fight to solidify his title shot. And I think that matchup should be Derrick Brunson versus the guy I just mentioned, Jarrod Canonier. Just beat Kelvin Gastelum. Snapped his loss after Robert Whittaker lost. He moved back into the win column against Kelvin Gastelum. Now I think he should look to take on Derrick Brunson. They're both on similar schedules. Jarrod Canonier just went 5 hard rounds. Derrick Brunson, he did get cracked in the third round and hurt a little bit here and there with some knees, maybe some elbows and some leg kicks, but he's not going to be too damaged, in all honesty. It's not like he got KO'd or that he took a beating over 5 rounds but somehow came back. I think Jarrod Canonier heals up for a little bit. Derrick Brunson takes a little bit of time off, and maybe we can put Derrick Brunson versus Jarrod Canonier on the main card of the pay-per-view with Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker 2 as the main event. Let's open up the main card, or have this as the feature fight of the main card of the Whittaker versus Adesanya 2 card in February next year, I believe it's going to be. So let's do Derrick Brunson, Jarrod Canonier, because otherwise Brunson's just going to get left out and he won't get himself a title shot. Does he maybe earn it anyway? Who knows? If Israel Adesanya beats a bunch more contenders and just sees Derrick Brunson waiting there and sees him as a bit of free legacy, maybe he'll look for a Derrick Brunson bout without Brunson having to fight again. But I think if he wants to be safe and make sure that he gets a title shot, he should look to take on Jarrod Canonier, and I think that's the best matchup to make next for Derrick Brunson. Moving on to Darren Till. Darren Till's next fight, in my opinion, he's in a real tricky position right now, because if he loses again, it's the Nassourdine Imavovs, it's the Andre Munizes, it's the Brendan Allens, it's all of these new up-and-comers in the middleweight division that are extremely well-rounded, that are pretty good, in all honesty. They might be the new wave of actual talent into the middleweight division. He's in a real tricky situation right now, so he has to play his next move very carefully, and I think there's a perfect matchup sitting there waiting for him. He can't take on Kelvin Gastelum. He's already beaten him, and even that doesn't really make too much sense. I believe the next fight for Darren Till could very well be Uriah Hall. I think it makes all the sense in the world. He just lost to Sean Strickland. It's either that or Darren Till waits for the loser of Sean Strickland versus Luke Rockhold, tries to get a matchup with them, but I don't see that one happening. I think that's a little bit too long of a waiting time for Darren Till. I think he's going to be eager to get back in there and get back in the win column. Darren Till, Uriah Hall. It could be a decent fight night main event, in all honesty. I mean, Darren Till in a main event is just going to sell the card because he's a big name anyway, but I don't think it maybe should be a main event. They're going to be quite far down the rankings now in the middleweight division. Darren Till, Uriah Hall, they're going to be in similar positions in the rankings. They're both coming off losses. They both need wins to continue their career. I think it's the best matchup to make. Darren Till, Uriah Hall, striking matchup. Good for Darren Till, unless he gets will kick KO'd and sent out to UFC just like Terry Etim. We'll see how it goes for him, but I think that's the next matchup to make. Uriah Hall took a lot of damage against Sean Strickland. I believe he actually, what's the bone in Uriah? The orbital bone. I think he hurt his orbital bone in that fight with Sean Strickland. So he is going to be looking to take a little bit of time off. I don't think he'll be returning to the cage until maybe early next year. I think the same goes for Darren Till. Maybe we can just do a bit of a middleweight showcase card on the Adesanya versus Whittaker 2 pay-per-view. We can have Adesanya Whittaker 2 as the main event. The winner of Volkanovski-Ortega versus the winner of Holloway-Rodriguez as the co-main event of that card. Feature fight Derrick Brunson versus Jarrod Canonier. And then Darren Till, Uriah Hall as the opener of the main card. And we can just shine a light on the middleweight division on that date. Who knows? I don't think it's good enough for a main event. But right now, Darren Till, Uriah Hall, two strikers, maybe the two most maybe potentially gifted strikers that don't have any volume whatsoever. It's going to be a great matchup. I'm sure they'll be staring at each other for minutes on end, but I think it's a decent matchup. Darren Till, Uriah Hall, two great strikers. Let's see it go down. I doubt anyone's going to shoot for a takedown, so it's a good matchup for both of them. And Uriah Hall won't get pressured. So maybe actually Uriah Hall will look at this fight and say, you know what, Darren Till's up the rankings. He's coming off a bad loss. He needs this win desperately. He's going to be desperate, and he doesn't pressure too well. So I can actually have a decent chance at winning this one. I think that's the matchup to make next. Moving on to the co-main event of the card. Tom Aspinall got an amazing win against Sergey Spivak over here, who's the loser in the losers column. I'm not going to cover too many of the losers on this card, but either way, Tom Aspinall got a great win in the co-main event. First round elbow TKO. It's so good to see great heavyweights on the come up. He's just an absolute freak. He's amazing. He's ridiculously fast, got great power, got great speed, got great footwork. And he called out someone in his post-fight interview when they went backstage into the conference. And I like the call out because right now when I'm looking at the heavyweight division, I'm seeing Rosenstruik versus Blades already booked up, and I doubt he's going to get the winner of that one. I'm seeing Daukaus versus Shamil Abdurakhimov booked up. I doubt he's going to get the winner of that one. The only two open opponents that there are right now in the heavyweight division are Blagojevenov and Sergey Spivak. Or not Sergey Spivak. Blagojevenov and Augusto Sakai. I always get those names mixed up. I think Tom Aspinall should go with the guy he called out after the fight, which was Blagojevenov. He's open right now. He's a top 15 guy. And I like Tom Aspinall's attitude of taking his time, working through the division, and if he wants to stay active and not have to wait for a very long time until he gets like a top 10 opponent, Blagojevenov is a perfect matchup. More experience, complete another contract, renegotiate before you fight top 10 opponents. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting for very low money for a title like Cyril Gane was. I think Tom Aspinall, complete your contract, take on Blagojevenov. Maybe in December, I think it's time to give Tom Aspinall a bit of a time on a card away from Darren Till. I know that he's sort of trickled down fame from Darren Till. If Darren Till's on the card, people are going to pay attention to Tom Aspinall. I think Aspinall needs to just be on his own card, be his own co-main event, without another guy from his gym as the main event that's going to take some of that spotlight, or he can be like the headliner of the prelims of a pay-per-view, or just somewhere on the prelims of a pay-per-view. Tom Aspinall, I think, should take on the guy he called out, Blagojevenov. Great matchup. I think it makes sense, and plus I'd like to see it as well. Blagojevenov, I know I didn't put him in his greatest chins video, or my greatest chins video. He might have the greatest chin of all time. He took bombs off Derrick Lewis like they were absolutely nothing. He takes shots like nobody's business. So I'd like to see Tom Aspinall maybe go 3 rounds here. Or he gets a KO in the first and proves that he actually does have ridiculous power and speed. And he has that level of power above some of the top guys in the heavyweight division. But I think that Blagojevenov might be able to take those shots, do a bit of grappling with Tom Aspinall as well, do a bit of good striking as well. He moves quite well for a big guy, does Blagojevenov. I think it's a great matchup to see just where Tom Aspinall is in this division. Tough guy, hard to put away, gonna show you a lot of things and gonna let us see a lot more about Tom Aspinall's game. Tom Aspinall, Blagojevenov, he made the call out. He doesn't call out many people, so as soon as he makes a call out, just pounce on that opportunity because it's all the hype we're going to get. Tom Aspinall, Blagojevenov, and for the guy who lost in the co-main event, Sergey Spivak, I think he needs to look to take on Ilir Latifi. A guy coming off a loss in the heavyweight division. Both of these guys had actually close fights with Derrick Lewis. Arguably, Ilir Latifi could have won that fight against Derrick Lewis, but Ilir Latifi, unranked in the division, just makes sense. Coming off a win against Tanabosa, I don't think you can put Sergey Spivak against a guy coming off a loss, because I think the first guy available that's coming off a loss, he's beaten, and also the second guy available that's coming off a loss, I believe, is Chase Sherman in the heavyweight division, so you can't really do that, and I feel like just timing-wise, Ilir Latifi is not so active. He's rarely in the cage, so sometime early next year, Sergey Spivak, Ilir Latifi, let's make the fight happen. It's a decently big name for Spivak's career. Moving on to the People's Feature fight, which wasn't actually the feature fight, but I put it there for a reason. Paddy Pimblett, go on, lads. Amazing win over Luigi Vendramini. Came back in the first round after getting rocked quite badly. You got to take your time with Paddy the Baddy. So you're not going to be seeing any ranked lightweights. Just a little warning here, because I know people like to do that whenever there's someone who has a bit of buzz around them. Don't feed this guy to top contenders right away. You saw him get cracked really badly against Luigi Vendramini. We can't just give him to top 5 contenders right now, or there might be a little bit of a problem. I think he needs to take his time, take on a guy who has a win in the UFC lightweight division. He was taking on a guy here who was coming off a loss, I believe, a pretty bad loss as well over a decision. Didn't look too amazing in that fight, so I think he needs to take on a winner and take on Ignacio Bahamondes. You're welcome. That is a feature fight of any Fight Night card very, very easily. It could even be a co-main event with the amount of followers that Paddy the Baddy has and that Ignacio Bahamondes has. Ignacio Bahamondes coming off an amazing highlight reel wheel kick KO over Roosevelt Roberts, coming off a win in the UFC lightweight division. I want to see that matchup. He's good at stand-up. He's decent on the ground. He can push a good pace. I think it'll be a great scrap. He's got a decent chin as well, so I think he could take good shots off Paddy Pimblett, make it a little bit more of a fun fight. I'd like to see that matchup next. That is the biggest hyped matchup you can make right now at lightweight that actually somewhat makes sense ranking-wise. Paddy Pimblett, Ignacio Bahamondes, sign me up, lads. Sign me up. I think you'll go out there, cabbage up Ignacio Bahamondes, but it'd be a great scrap. I actually think it'd be a close one. Ignacio Bahamondes is really good at striking, very technical. Maybe he finds some holes in Paddy Pimblett's game, because I know he leaves his chin open a lot of time, and he does get a little bit vulnerable to certain strikes. Paddy Pimblett, Ignacio Bahamondes, end of the year in December, very last card of the year, maybe the very last Fight Night card of the year, or they could do it as maybe the headliner of the prelims of a pay-per-view to butter everyone up to buy the main card some point in December. That would be a great fight to have. Paddy Pimblett, Ignacio Bahamondes. Moving on to someone else on the card. Khalil Rountree got a great win on the main card, completely destroyed the leg of Modest Aspakauskas. Very brutal victory for Khalil Rountree. I think Khalil Rountree needs to take on a man by the name of, and I'm telling you, this fight that gets made, you're going to love the look of this fight, okay? You're just going to love it. William Knight, Gyno Man himself. Khalil Rountree versus William Knight is one of the more explosive bouts you can make in the lightweight division, especially in the unranked section as well. Both guys coming off one win after losing beforehand. Khalil Rountree, William Knight, both similarly ranked in the light heavyweight division. Match them up together. Only one can continue. And the winner of that one can start looking at names in the top 20. Like if OSP gets one more win, then they can use him to leapfrog the winner of this one up towards the rankings. I think that's a great matchup to make. Khalil Rountree, William Knight, similar schedules, similar finishes, not much damage. Get him back in there in December. Maybe on the Paddy Pimblett card. Pimblett versus Ignacio Bahamondes in the feature fight, Aspinall versus Blagojevenov in the co-main event, main event elsewhere, who knows what the main event's going to be, maybe even this if they're going to be active enough, and then do Khalil Rountree, William Knight to open up the main card. Great scrap. Moving on, the feature fight of the card, the actual feature fight of the card, Alex Morono got a big win over David Zawada in the feature fight by decision. He called out a name in his post-fight interview, Matt Brown. Makes sense. They're both around the same area in the rankings. They're both coming off wins right now. Matt Brown flattened out Cole Diego Lima, who took Bilal Muhammad to a pretty scrappy decision loss. I think Alex Morono, Matt Brown, great matchup to make. And honestly, when people call each other out like that, it just makes the matchup so much easier to make. So I think that's what they should do next. Good matchup for both of them. Winnable fight for Matt Brown, I'm sure. I think Alex Morono would win that bout. But for Matt Brown, it's not like, oh, it's Chaos Williams. Like, you're giving him someone who at least isn't going to KO him in the first round, so he has a chance to maybe go out there, show a few tricks, and who knows, maybe even get the win. And I think the winner of this one is going to be in a position to maybe get themselves on a top 15 ranked opponent, because ideally, when Nick Diaz comes back against Robbie Lawler, if he does win, I don't want to see him chucked to the top 5. He'll never get the belt. We know that. You know, we know Nick Diaz ain't going to get the belt in the welterweight division. So let's have some fun matchups made for him with the Carlos Condits of the welterweight division, with the Matt Browns of the welterweight division. If Matt Brown can get a win over Alex Morono, then we can do Nick Diaz, Matt Brown, mid next year. I think it'd be a great matchup to make. Alex Morono, Matt Brown. We'll see how it goes. Jack Magnumedov on the prelims got another win, adding to his undefeated record, now 15-0, 12-0 as an amateur. That makes him, 27-0 overall, which is a pretty ridiculous record to have in terms of all of MMA experience that he has. Clean win over Ludovic Shalinian. No problems whatsoever. He even had a torn shoulder, and you can kind of see that in the fight, the way he couldn't finish that arm triangle. I think he needs a step up in competition, and I think a perfect step up in competition for him would be Howlian Paver. He mentioned he wanted to fight Kyler Phillips. That's a name that he had his mind on. He didn't mind the style of Kyler Phillips. He kind of liked that matchup for himself. So why not fight the guy who has a win over Kyler Phillips, even though it should have been a draw? He took a lot of damage in that fight, so he's going to have to be out for a very long time, because he almost got concussed on many different occasions. And also Howlian Paver, a young guy, he's not going to rush back into the cage, I don't believe. I think we're going to be seeing Howlian Paver next year, April, May, something like that, in his new division of bantamweight. bulk himself up a little bit. He took this fight at bantamweight against Kyler Phillips on short notice. I'm sure now he wants to pack on some size, not be the short notice flyweight guy, and actually try and establish himself in this new division. Jack Shaw, Howley and Paver, great matchup, similarly ranked, and I think the winner of that one will definitely get a number 15 spot in the bantamweight division. Moving on to another fight that happened, Marc-Andre Barriault beat Dalchalungi and Bula pretty impressively over 3 rounds. I think the next matchup for him is probably going to be Abdul Razak Al Hassan, a newcomer to the middleweight division. Not middleweight. Yes, middleweight. Yes, middleweight division. A newcomer to the middleweight division from the welterweight division. Head kick KO'd Alessio Di Chirico in the first round. He's only on a 1-fight win streak, though, and he had a lot of losses before that, so I think he needs to tally up at least 2 decently good wins if he's going to get them in the same fashion that he got Alessio Di Chirico's winning. So if he KOs Alessio Di Chirico, and then who knows, gets a KO over Marc-Andre Barriault or just beats him, then we can start talking about moving Abdul up the middleweight division or moving Marc-Andre up the middleweight division as well. So I think that's a great matchup to make, and that's all the fights to make after UFC Vegas 36. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye. Sean Shelby, you know what to do. Just watch these videos and fucking follow along, but there will be problems, okay? And I know that they follow along. A lot of matchups that get made on this show get made in real life. I'll see you, Sean Shelby. Toodle pip.